Good morning, and welcome to Making Sense of It. This is our gift to you from the Glasser Institute for Choice Theory. I'm Mona Duncan, your moderator, and each week we have a member of the Glasser Institute to talk about a concept that they use and give illustrations so that you can maybe latch onto some of the ideas and use them for yourself. We are privileged, have been privileged for the last 7 months to have a talk each month from Robert J. Martin, and he, a former professor and still quite knowledgeable, and he's an author, and he has written a book entitled Connect and Involve. And each month, he gives us a in-depth look at a chapter, and today we're looking at chapter 8, which is increased learning by teaching procedures. So Robert, we're ready when you are.
Okay, well, welcome. This is going to be about procedures. This is our 8th meeting, and let's go ahead and get started. I will put us on screen share here. Okay, I believe that's up now. And
one more. You need to go all the way up to the full screen.
Right. It's not letting me do that.
Normally it's at the bottom right.
Yeah, with okay, here we go. Play from the start.
Okay, very good.
Okay, and I'm going to move things out of the way a little bit. Okay, so this is our 8th presentation on this general theme of connecting with students, involving them in learning, and improving achievement. So we're going to be talking about procedures. Well, why teach procedures? Well, procedures work everywhere. We use them everywhere. Just a few areas: sports, music, mathematics, writing, planning, any kind of research, whether by a kindergartner or a PhD, team learning, and so on and on. Just some examples. We don't think about the procedures we have to do to drive a car. We just drive. We don't focus on recognizing and sounding out words. We just read. We don't think about spelling, how to spell a word. We just write. And that's because we have mastered the procedures that go into the skill that allows us to drive or read or write, play the piano, whatever it happens to be. So procedures make tasks easier, and they free students and everybody to do more complex tasks. They automate lower level tasks and thereby free minds for higher level thinking. So on the left here, we see a young student looking at a storytelling workbook. I don't know if you can see that's what it says, but she's not only reading, she's also has a pencil or a pen there, so she's filling in things. So she's doing a very complex set of skills which rest on all of the procedures that go into reading and writing and understanding the topic. So one of the things I often ran into as a professor was resistance to procedures, because it's like, well, this is going to be boring for the students, and I don't know what I want to do it. But the benefit is it saves time for more complex activities, more complex tasks, more complex learning. Another one is like, well, this doesn't seem necessary. They should already know this. But in fact, we know that one of the reasons why students don't do team learning well, or teachers don't know how to involve students in team learning, is that they don't have the procedures to teach the students that are going to make it work. And then the last one that I used to hear was like, well, this is regimented, and I don't want to be regimented. But actually, The lack of procedures prevents us from being free. Once we have the procedures, it frees us to focus on what is the activity that we want to be involved in, whether it's conversation or other kinds of action. So, how do you teach procedures? This is way too complex to do in 20 minutes, but I'm just going to go over a few key things. So first of all, what we're aiming for. We're aiming at doing the same steps every time, all the time, so that they become a habit and thereby automate a behavior or a series of behavior. And that in turn increases our ability to learn more complex skills and ideas. And what we're always wanting to do in school is to focus on the key ideas, the big ideas and the key skills that are necessary to go on to the next grade, the next class, and also to do well on testing, particularly the kinds of testing that come up that the whole school, the whole district has to do, and that then teachers are judged on. So the first task is to observe. This is probably the hardest one, because the fact is that we're sort of, all the procedures we know, every day we're swimming in a sea of procedures, but they're invisible to us. We just do them automatically. We rely on them without realizing. We forget. The procedures that we have learned have become invisible, including the sea of procedures that we do quite perfectly without thinking. You use your fork perfectly. You never stick it in your eye. And you've done that since you were very, very young. So it's not just a matter of doing the procedures correctly, but also there are many procedures that we do quite perfectly because we use them all the time. So a little bit about how I became aware of the idea of procedures, of doing the same steps every time, all the time. So here we see on the right is a catamaran, which is basically two hulls and with a trampoline in between. So for decades, I have been involved in owning and sailing catamarans. Well, what we see on the right here is somebody putting up the mast, and you have to do that virtually every time you take the catamaran out in the typical situation. Now, the thing is that the mast is heavy and it's dangerous. You could slip on the catamaran and have the mast fall on you. It could slip away and fall on the boat and damage the mast. It could damage the boat, all kinds of things. So I was looking on YouTube and we're trying to learn what I could do to do a better job of this. And I noticed somebody who was advertising about how to lift the mast in a certain way. So I actually called him. He was in Florida, and he ran through a bunch of things I could do to be safe. And then he said to me, the important thing to be safe is to do this. And I wanted to be safe. I did not want to be hurt. And I did not want the boat to be hurt. To do the same steps every time, all the time. That really stuck to me. That really stuck with me. And that's really quite amazing, because I had already been an educational psychologist for several decades. So I was supposed to be an expert in learning, and I was teaching everything I knew on learning. So I was supposed to be an expert for my students as well. And here was something that I had never really properly noticed. I'd really never paid attention. So I started paying attention to this, and that became a key thing for me. The same steps every time, all the time. And I realized it didn't just have to be with things that had to do with safety, but things that had to do with other things. So I started observing. So this is my key idea of, like, it's really hard to observe ourselves and observe our students. But if you can somehow associate this with procedures that you use that have to do with safety, then it very quickly becomes spread to other parts of your life. I could give you lots of examples, but we won't get into that here. Okay, step 2 is you need to design a procedure when you notice, oh, my students really need a procedure here. And we'll go into some examples of that. So you want to have a procedure for designing a procedure. The one that I like is that I write out instructions in outline form as I figure them out. So I will write down a step and then write down another step and then realize they need to be reversed. And I start with the low-hanging fruit and gradually figure out what are the steps I need to go through. And sometimes I can even find people who have already told me how to do this. So for example, one of the chapters that we'll get into is on team learning. And if you look at Kagan's book on cooperative learning, he gives you dozens and dozens and dozens of procedures in order to do various kinds of team learning. You can also do this on a personal level as well. Big thing is don't over-explain, keep things simple. The third thing, which has to do with keeping things simple, is to step students through the procedure one step at a time, whether you're dealing with adults or children. I've done a lot of things with children and middle school and high school and also college, but also adults. I've worked with people in prison employees, and it doesn't matter. We're all basically the same when it comes to learning a new procedure. So you don't tell them, we're going to do this, this, and this. Now do it. You step them through. Okay, everybody stand up. Okay, now everybody find a partner. Okay, you're stepping them through one step at a time. And as you do this a number of times, they've learned this. I've learned dozens of strategies this way, often at conferences, at science conferences, at the William Glasser Institute conferences, at small regional Glasser Institute conferences. It's the best possible way is to go through the experience yourself, and then you can go and do it with others. Another thing is to just give directions once. That's really hard because we're all tend to say, oh, well, could you repeat that? What you have to realize is you get into the habit of giving directions multiple times, but students do hear. So there are a number of things you can do. One is after you say the sentence, then you can say, okay, Samantha, what did I just say? Repeat. Or Bill, what did I just say? Or Elon, okay, what was the instruction? And they'll be able to do it. I've had teachers who said, well, I have this one student, I just don't believe he just can't get it. And I said, okay, I'll make a bet with you. Go in and give the instruction. And then when the student raises their hand, say, if you can repeat what I just said, I'll give you $1. And I'll bet you they can. And next week they came back and it was like, oh yeah, they could do it. The thing is, students don't always realize this is in long-term memory. I did hear it. I just don't realize I heard it because I wasn't paying attention to what I was hearing, but it's still there. So this is quite a remarkable kind of thing that we're not often aware of, is that people do hear, they can repeat. Another important thing is say what you want. Don't say what you don't want. We're all in the habit of saying, don't do this, don't do that, don't walk, don't run, don't do whatever. And it takes practice not to say the negative thing. Now, why shouldn't you do the negative thing? Well, because you want to say walk rather than say don't run, because when you say, well, imagine you're outside and you're in a field and you notice people are starting to run. And so you say, don't run. Well, what is the kinesthetic meaning of don't run is running and then canceling that. So, and this is true for adults, it's true for children. Whenever you hear something negative, you first have to access kinesthetically and in your mind the positive meaning of that and then try to cancel it out. It's much better to train yourself to say what it is that you want. And I know for myself, it's like, yeah, you really have to figure out, oh, gee, I screwed that up. What can I do better here? How can I be more careful about making sure I know what it is that I want? So that's a key thing when you're asking anybody to do anything. So just to give you a little example, when my son was about 4, we were visiting a colleague of ours, and everything in her house was an antique. She collected antiques, she used antiques, and so on. Anyway, all of her plates that she served us on, all of her serving plates, were all antiques. She invited our 4-year-old son, maybe he was 5 at the time, to go over and bring a plate that was on a sideboard over. And I'm thinking like, oh, please don't drop this, please. Please don't drop this. And she said, hold the plate carefully and walk slowly. And he did that, and it worked out fine. And afterwards I realized, and we even talked about this because she taught early childhood. When you say don't drop the plate, the child accesses the kinesthetic of drop and then tries to catch it, and then it's already broken. And this is true for children, it's true for adults. So, and it's true for giving ourselves instructions. Focus on what you want to do, not what you don't want to do. So the teacher should say, listen carefully, instead of stop talking so I can talk. Okay, in the process of learning procedures, students are not going to do it perfectly. I've been involved for many years in community theater, and we rehearse the same thing over and over until we get it right. And the practice is an opportunity to improve what we're doing. We've had shows where we had small children, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, who did their job perfectly, and people were amazed. The adults were amazed and would talk to us after. How did you get the students to do that? Well, they wanted to do it, and we rehearsed it. They wanted to be in the show until they got it, including such things as sitting perfectly and being quiet and not talking for 20 minutes while they focused on what was going on stage, and they were also on stage. So this is a big thing from Carol Dweck that I encourage everybody to do with others, whether you're a teacher, a parent, or whatever, and that is emphasize a mistake is an opportunity to learn. So present procedures as a chance to eliminate mistakes. We're going to get better at this by practicing. Coming back to the idea of teach procedures that you think you shouldn't have to teach, including teaching yourself. I have been training myself to do things so that every day I always put my phone in one pocket, I put my wallet in my other pocket with my keys, and so I always know where to find them. And when I don't do that, then I can't find my keys or my wallet or my phone. So this could be things like organizing papers you've handed back. And as a counselor, I've had to help students learn these kinds of things because they were failing. And as the counselor, the principal says, here, fix this kid. And so we were getting into learning procedures and making plans using the Glasser methods so that the students could succeed. Taking notes, memorizing. If you want students to take notes, teach them how you want them to take them so that they have at least one good way to do it. If you want them to memorize, teach them how to memorize. If you want them to cooperate as a team, teach them how to do that. My wife insisted I put in the example of putting name on the paper, because that, as a community college instructor, something she had to do every semester was teach them how to put their name on the paper, because they would put just their first name on the paper because they were just used to doing that in high school or whatever. And here she had 3 Bills and 2 Karens or whatever. And it's like, I don't know who is who here. And so she would have to teach them how she wanted them to put their name on the paper. So the thing about practice, and this is something that Glasser, I think, really emphasized, was you have to do it more than once. You have to do it at least 20 times. Or if you're looking at certain kinds of skills, such as basketball on the right here, then for each kind of shot you want to learn how to make, you're probably going to have to do that thousands of times to get good at it. You're still not going to be perfect, but you will improve. So, summary is the key idea of procedures is to think of it as an opportunity to increase the freedom of the teacher, to go on to higher order learning and to increase achievement, but also to free the students. Students love to be competent, and it increases their competence. And as they increase their freedom and their competence, that also increases their fun and their joy. What we see on the right here is, this was the best picture I could find of joy. And what do we see here? Swinging is something we learn as a small child, and we can do it all our lives, and we never forget how to do it. Okay. So if you're interested in any of these ideas, I will be happy to send you a free chapter 1, which kind of indicates what all of the ideas are in the various chapters. You can write me at rmartinmusic@icloud.com, and I'll also send you information on how to get a discount from the publisher, should you be interested. Okay, well, I will stop sharing here, and we will.
Well, thank you, Robert. That was wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So you automate it, and in the manner of automating that begins to free our mind.
Exactly.
So I like those steps, and the fact that as I was writing them down, I took an initiative I got from you, that I started number 1 down here, and then I put 2, 3, 4, 5, because you were saying that as we step up to these things, we rise higher. And that
We
was a really good way to say
capable of every complex activity we do is built on a set of automated procedures that we had to learn with great difficulty. It took a lot of practice, but then they become invisible. We even don't forget. And so as teachers and parents and employers, we often forget. It's like, well, it took way back when, it took me a lot of effort to learn how to do this stuff.
Well, your examples was very apropos. And I like
Right.
the fact that, the catamaran person you talked with, that it just kind of lets us know that we can continue to learn at any age.
And it still scares the life out of me too. Yeah, when I'm very, very careful getting everything set up just so, because it takes all my strength and all my brain to make sure that I don't get hurt.
Yeah, yeah. And when you were talking about having a place for your wallet and your pen and various things, sometimes we go around having to do the pat down to see that those things are still there.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very, very much. And thank those of you that are attending live. Please stay tuned. We're going to close the recording down. And then those of you that are here personally, we would like to hear your questions or comments from the presentation today or your additional input. So thank you for being here. And those of you that watch this later know that if you will tune in each Wednesday morning, you can attend live and then join in the chat afterward. So thank you for being here and have a great day and good mental health.